Previously on Crowdfunding Countdown. That's just too much shipping. The shipping's a little much for me. Too much shipping. It's a lot of shipping. Shipping? I don't even know her. Enough of that. I don't have the energy or the time to change my shirts to make that bit work. Welcome to Crowdfunding Countdown, where we take a look at every single board game campaign finishing up this week. If you're looking for Chow Chow Funding Chow Down, well, that class is in another room. I'm just laughing. I just got a notification on my Discord. Our deathmatch just finished, and so I posted the new deathmatch tournament that's going to be up for August, which you don't get to learn about if you're not a patron member, or you get to learn about it, later. But I put Bounce Off as a 5 complexity, and somebody just noticed that, so I'm very happy. Thank you, Carlos, for noticing and appreciating that joke. And while we're on the subject of the deathmatch, thank you to all of my newest patrons. Usually the new patron shout out goes here, but you know what? For all of you people who just signed up for Patreon to support the Room and Board channel, I want to spit on you. Actually, that's a higher tier. You probably can't afford that one. But I'm not saying who joined because they would like to remain anonymous. I did get a $100 million donation, but they want to remain anonymous, so I will respect their wishes. And we definitely did get new patrons, so don't worry. We didn't just lose patrons. We got new patrons because people like the channel and they want to support. So that's, I'm always very appreciative of that and of all my patrons for your continued support. Honestly, by now, you all rock. If I had a certain something, I could give a certain shout out to a certain patron, but I'm gonna have to wait until I get back home and get that thing. Ooh, how mysterious is that? Better keep watching every week, every episode, every day, or else you'll never know when this one little thing pops up. But luckily that means there's more time for games, more time for campaigns, and let's get into the first one right away, which is a game called Halves. And fair warning, any attempt to venture even onto this campaign page, well, it'll leave you with being forced to buy Halves, not once or twice, but 7 times, alongside every single vinyl record of the Rattlesnakes. Just because if you don't, well then the creators will no doubt find you in a back alley and probably bite you. I think I'm putting myself at risk just making this segment, because if I were to say anything bad about them, well, I would likely disappear, and you probably wouldn't even see another tear tattoo, because, let's face it, I'm not worth the ink. But this is a little word game that plays fairly quickly, and you know what? Legitimately, I think it actually looks pretty fun. You're going to be dealt 5 cards, and each card has a word on it and a color associated with the word. And there's 4 different colors. There's black, blue, red, and yellow, which pertain to the different categories of word. And basically, your clue has to correspond with those categories. So if it's blue, you have to give a word that rhymes with the word that you're holding. Or if it's red, you have to give a word that pairs perfectly with it. The example they give on the campaign page is if the word is hot, you could say wire, or line, hot wire, or hotline. Or my personal favorite, what I get paid in on any sort of contract, dog. Not in actual dogs. That would be death by floof. I get paid in half-eaten hot dogs. That's the Room and Board payment plan. And so everybody else has 30 seconds to get it. If they do, they get the card. If they don't, you get to keep the card. Very simple. The black category is traps, so you can set your opponents up for trap words, and they'll lose points instead of gain points. They're all worth different point values. And this is created by 2 guys who make up your new favorite punk rock and roll band, the Rattlesnakes, who, they're a vibe. And honestly, if you take a look at the shipping prices of the world and you just feel like screaming, well, put on a Rattlesnakes song and let them do it for you. And what's awesome about this campaign is that they have a free print and play. You don't even have to pledge for it. You can just download it, print out the cards, see if you feel like it's something that has longevity, and then purchase it. And it's not a horrible purchase price either. It's £15 or $24 Canadian for the base game, and then it's £30 or $47 Canadian, and you get in the Not Safe for Work expansion that always happens with a funny card game. Heyo! We did it! It's been so long since we've had a funny card game. It's more of a word game, but when you throw in a Not Safe for Work expansion, well, that's an NSFA from me. You also get a punk expansion, which of course you do. I do need to mention that the shipping for Halves is outrageous to get to Canada, so it's a no-go for me, but it's like £7 to £12 to get it anywhere else, so not bad. I'd probably just go for the print and play, but still, actually better than I was expecting. I don't love the concept of the trap cards, but I haven't seen them in practice, right? I do love the description of the game and how the lead singer said he's always liked games, he's always liked word games, especially because he really relates to lyricism. And it's a really nice descriptor of someone who's clearly passionate about a thing and has created this thing. So I'm happy it's funded, I'm happy it exists. And if you're interested in that, that finishes at 4 p.m. Tuesday, which is tomorrow. Next up, we have a game called Planting Evidence. And I was actually looking forward to looking into this one because somebody from last week said that they're backing this one. And unfortunately, I can't tell you who because I'm not a snitch. Unlike your role in this game. In Planting Evidence, you are snitches looking for some stitches, as you try to frame one of your crime compatriots for murder and send them away. And I guess it's a murder that you all completed, and that's why you have access to the scene before the police have shown up, or maybe it's just a random murder that you have tracked down like some bizarro Spider-Man and said, okay, before the cops get here, let us just throw a bunch of weapons all around the scene. One of them, I'm sure, will be the murder weapon. Anyway, it's a set collection game. It's basically murder gin rummy. You're going to pick up a card and you're going to put down a card. And when you're putting down a set of cards, you can either place it in front of you to counteract sets that are currently in front of you, or you can place it in front of somebody else and say, look, your fingerprints are all over the crime scene, Steve. I am the forensic investigator now. Because the goal of the game isn't actually just to frame someone for murder, it's to become the forensic investigator, which is if you have the lowest score, you're the least suspicious, then I guess you get a job at a police station, because that makes sense. I always had a feeling that police would hire their forensic investigators, not from in the organization, because that would be silly, but by going to a murder scene where you see 4 people with blood clearly on their hands, but one person has a little bit more blood on their hands, and so you lock them up and give the person with the least blood the title of forensic investigator for all future investigations. Anyway, the premise sounds fun, but the rulebook makes it a little less so. It really is just gin rummy for $40 Canadian plus $15 US in shipping, because they have the pledges in Canadian, but then the US prices in shipping. I don't know why that is. There's also an $8 Canadian print and play if that's more up your alley. I just think if you want to play this game, you could take that gin rummy and probably have a very comparable experience. Anyway, I tell you when that finishes, but I'm not a snitch, so you're gonna have to figure that out for yourself. Now, next up, just briefly, over on GameFound, we have a series of Hans Christian Andersen games. There's 6 games that are based around fairy tales, and 3 of them are card games, 3 of them are flip and write games. For the flip and writes, we have the Emperor's New Clothes, where you're trying to color in some clothes for the emperor so he stops streaking all over the neighborhood. Oh yeah, when an emperor does it, he's fine. But when I do it, I get banned from my local meetups. For shame. Then there's a Little Mermaid game where you're trying to cover a grid. There's an Ugly Duckling game where you're trying to scratch out a grid with polyominoes. There's a Princess and the Pea game where you're placing cards on top of the bed and you gotta match them first. It's basically like Crazy Eights. Then there's this game Snow Queen and Tinderbox, and yeah, that's about it. And honestly, once I got to the sort of Crazy Eight portion of the event, I stopped looking into it very seriously, especially since it's $55 Canadian for the 3 card games and $77 Canadian for the flip and write games, which I don't see why anybody's purchasing any of these. None of them look interesting enough to warrant that price point. I don't care if you get 3, hence the just barely funded status of the campaign. I mean, to be fair, sometimes there are gems that are not funding, but this is not one of those times. But that's the only thing that's really finishing up over on GameFound that we're going to talk about at least, and that finishes at 4 p.m. August 3rd. Now, next up we have League of the Lexicon, which I feel a little bit underdressed for now. I'll try to class up this description a little bit. Whether it be reading the dictionary, watching videos on YouTube, or problematic Christmas movies that you're just going to love anyway, everything sounds much better, excuse me, much better in received pronunciation. And of course, is the surefire way to impress upon your audience the benefits of language. It doesn't matter that the 2 brothers of these Two Brothers games are actually small children, because one can only assume that the game shall be made in a factory containing many small children. It is indeed going to be fun for the whole family, from production to play. But of course, this game is a game that has never been done before. A completely unique sort of game, where you throw a dice to determine your category, or rather, the category of the question you must answer, as you move forward on your pursuit in the least trivial knowledge of the world. This entirely innovative game puts language at the forefront, and lets random chance determine if a player will win quickly or not, as you draw random artifact cards, hoping to match the symbols on your character. Now hold your wallets for just 1 second. I will attempt to switch my mother tongue so as not to persuade the idiots of the world, such as you are. I shall switch back to a voice that is less imposing and reminds you all less of my incredible intellect, although it is ever present. But before I do, I must inform you that there are 2 levels of difficulty. That's right, 1 and 2. Ticklish and Tricksy. And you know, I would be interested in playing with either. It's a trivia word game. That's what this is. That's all it is. Just a big box of questions about words. And honestly, I think I would love this game. I do love language, and I love how it's presented, and I love that they've gotten questions from actual dictionary writers, or wordsmiths, as they say, or linguists, and people who are in the field. They even have a quote from Stephen Fry, and that guy's, you know, he's pretty smart. He's a smart guy. And he's a very well-spoken person as well. I am surprised that they didn't ask for a question from the famed rapper The Oddity, but I think it is because they knew I wouldn't be able to choose between Ticklish or Tricksy. I mean, sometimes you feel like you want both. Anyway, it's £28 or $44 Canadian plus £15 in shipping, but that's just for the base game, and then they have a couple of expansions, which you would think would be included with the Kickstarter price. It isn't. It's also in the higher tiers. This game, I honestly think I would have a blast with. I legitimately would love this game. But I also know that it's kind of a one and done situation. And you know what else I would legitimately love? Just doing a quiz like this online. It's not necessarily what I seek in my game nights, but if you are interested, check it out. It finishes Thursday, August 4th at 4:47 a.m. or 10:47 Great Britain time. That's the official, that's what it is, right? It's not GMT. It's GBT. Great Britain time. I can see why they didn't ask me to contribute. Now, next up we have a game called Taverns and Dragons, which I believe is a reskin from their previous game, Brothels and Roaches, which surprisingly didn't do that well. It didn't really attract the family crowd, which this game is sort of geared towards. So I think this reskin is probably better. Anyway, it's a game about gathering points. You have to get the most prestige points at the end of 7 rounds, and you're going to do that by completing ingredient cards, recipe cards, hunting down dragons, dealing damage to big beasts, and moving your people along the map. And basically the overarching structure of the game is you're going to roll 5 dice, and then whoever's the lowest amount gets to go first, so they at least get a little bit of an advantage, which is a nice first player determiner. And then you choose a dice, and you can do a number of things with it. You can move your little minions clockwise around the board in a certain number of spaces, according to the number on the dice. You can complete recipes with them, getting bonus points for the number that's on the dice. So there's always going to be reasons to use your high dice in a number of ways. You can go and attack dragons, or you can just, you know, take a break and gain some dang energy, which is an action that I am quite unfamiliar with at this point. But yeah, that's the structure of the game. It's a very entry-level dice as action points game. I'm not sure actually what that mechanic is called. That mechanic is called Chris didn't write it down, and we're moving on. They also really do have a bunch of sweet little stretch goals, like marbling the dice, making them look a little bit nicer, and it's a decent price point. It's €45 or $59 Canadian, and then the shipping also isn't that terrible. It's like $12 to $16, obviously $16 for me in Canada. So it would bring my price point around that $80, $84 level, and that, while that is too high for me for what this is, and I'm not really that interested because it seems a little too lightweight for me, it's not a completely unreasonable Kickstarter purchase, as most Kickstarter purchases are nowadays. And something that might interest the Europe-bound members of this YouTube community or the Europe audience is that VAT is actually included in this price. So I'm fairly impressed, actually, with what's on offer here. I think for people who are more interested in, heavy games, this wouldn't interest you. But if you do have a family and you want to get a game that is good for your family right now, and then not when it arrives 2 years down the line because your kids have outgrown it, then check this one out. This one finishes August 4th at 5 p.m. Now, next we have Copperdale, and this is something that if you're a solo gamer, you should pay attention to. This is by company Small Box Games, and it is a print and play, or as they call it, a print where you want. And so all you need is a pencil and a standard deck of 52 cards. And on your turn, well, because it's always your turn, it's a solo game, you'll reveal 3 cards and you'll get to assign them one at a time to 3 different parts of your town. And the goal is just to beat your score. You're trying to get a bunch of medals and max out your score. And so when you flip up a card, you can use its suit or its number or both, depending on what category you're assigning it to, and you're trying to make pairs or you're trying to make different combinations of numbers. And the trick is that you can choose where to assign your first one, but then your second one goes in a certain spot, and then your third one is in the leftover spot. So it's trying to maximize these areas without busting or getting a beneficial draw on your last card to try to make sure everything syncs up. And it looks kind of cool. It does look really cool. You can unlock occupations, which give you a new skill that you can use throughout the game, and that feels really solid, but you need to use your cards in order to get that. And it's $4. $4 for a print and play. Sorry, no, $4 for a print where you want. And for $4, I mean, that's pretty good. Copperdale told you you can print it wherever you want. On the walls of your doctor's office, on your distant uncle's casket. You could get it as a tattoo on literally anyone you know, not just yourself. Sorry, Harry. It's time for me to play a game of Copperdale. Please lie flat down on my table. I mean, for only $4, the amount of chaos that you can cause with a print where you want is almost never ending at this point. Anyway, if you are interested in that, check it out. That finishes at 8 p.m. on August 5th. Now, next up, we have an RPG campaign called Lewd Dungeon, or as I like to call it, Brothel and Roaches 2. This time, there's lobster. This is a special Patreon request that I cover this campaign, because of course I saw it as an RPG and I didn't think I needed to cover it. But there's a few people over there who've been drinking too much of the Spicyfy Kool-Aid, which you know Fabio will never release the recipe for. And they wanted it, and hey, what they want, they get. If you want to save this channel, you better sign up for Patreon, so you can fight against these naughty, wicked bad boys and girls and non-binary folk. And so we have the Lewd Dungeon, a campaign that could only have been created by Fabio's RPG-loving brother, Labio. We have finally unlocked the key to what all role-playing games need: less clothes. Actually, it is created by a woman, not Fabio's brother. I guess Fabio's sister, Phoenix Gray is her name. That's the author. And it's great that it is created by a woman, because you know that it might actually then cater to both parties' needs. But yeah, we finally have a role-playing games for couples who will revolutionize how we role-play. And it's nice to bring, the RPG games into the bedroom. That's, I think, what they were originally designed for. Or maybe I'm just speaking from my own personal experience from what my dungeon master has been telling me. It's nice to have a dungeon master just in the corner of your dungeon. Just, directing everything. Makes for a really intimate experience. Just me, Maggie, and old glass-eyed Ted in the corner. But if you're not into that, well, what is great is that you don't actually need a DM to slip into these DMs, which is probably good, because honestly, I'm not as adventurous as Maggie is, although she has stretched my boundaries. And no, that's not a euphemism. Anyway, this is legitimately a full rule set for couples in the bedroom who want to elevate their role-playing. But before we knock boots, we have to roll some dice. And basically, it just seems like it will be a campaign story where every NPC is seducible. And every time you die, you have to convince the deity, the dungeon master, the other person who's kind of running the game, who presumably is the second member of your couple, to revive you back to life. And honestly, I'm into it. I thought this might be a funnier segment, but hey, I'm an evolved being. Maggie has changed me. And also, yes, I do want her to take on the role of Lady Jai, the willful 18-year-old who has left the safety of the castle and run away into the forest and hasn't come back yet.
Did you say 80-year-old?
No.
Oh.
We can workshop it.
Okay,
So yeah, I'm actually
buddy.
thrilled that this exists. I can't believe it has raised so much money, but then, yeah, I can believe it. Even though my sexy dice allegiance will always be of the devilish variety, this could make a case in usurping its top spot. Because in this one, well, of course you can cast spells like Full Body Condom, Grabby Hands, and the ever-sexy UV Light. Oh, yeah, these are the names of the spells that you use to get you in the mood. And of course, as you fight off the Icy Hearts or the Dirty Bastards. I know, this sounds like a campaign that I would completely make up, but everything I have said is very true. I mean, you know, if I was making up the titles of the spells, I would make it Maggie's Massage and Maggie's Homemade Meal, because she makes a mean spaghetti carbonara that honestly probably puts most NPCs' dalliances to shame. Anyway, it's a $5 digital pledge for those who are curious about buying, or bi-curious, I forget the term, one or the other, and depending on what format you get it in, it's 21 pages, but of course, it will be longer when you add illustrations. And again, that's not a euphemism. The physical book will be longer. So yeah, anyway, if you're interested in purchasing a copy and meeting up with me in Vegas to try out the drinking version of the rule sets, because that's included in there as well, of course, right? Well, that finishes at 10:03 a.m. Friday, August 5th. Now, next up we have Euthia Resurrected, or Euthia, if you're nasty. And I did a full 5 reasons you shouldn't back Euthia, where I talk about my excitement for the game and the potential reasons why you shouldn't spend $282 Canadian to get just the base pledge to your door. So I'm not going to talk about this one in too much detail. I don't want to repeat myself. I will just tell you what the game is about at the high level sort of situation. You'll have your own character, which can be leveled up in a number of ways, and you're going to run around the board trying to get the most prestige, and this person who has the most prestige at the end of the game wins, or you can have a cooperative scenario, which apparently isn't as good as the competitive. So you should go for competitive. That, again, was one of the reasons. Looks like you can skip the video entirely. But yeah, it's this sandbox open world where you always have a choice to use your action tokens as movement or as something else. And I like this choice. I like how this choice feels like it'll play out. The monster battles, they're going to be determined through rolling dice and your buffs that you've created with your character to take down increasingly difficult monsters. There'll be places on the board where you can run to and defeat the elementals first, and then it's easier to get points there, and other people will have to pay more to get the same amount of points and catch up to you. It's this big open world, this map that will be constantly ever expanding at a huge, huge price tag. The core pledge, like I said, is £152, and then after shipping, because it's going to be a big box, you know shipping's going to be £30 to £40, and more if you're trying to get more and more stuff. It's gonna come in at a extremely high price point. And I'm really glad at the number of fairly reasonable for Kickstarter, at least, options that have been on offer this week on Crowdfunding Countdown, if for nothing else, to remind me at how ridiculous a price tag that $282 price tag is, because we get desensitized to it, right? Or at least I do. Maybe you don't. You probably don't. I know you're better than me. You don't have to keep telling me. I know it in my soul, in my heart. But I get desensitized to these sorts of things when I look through as many campaigns as I do, and when I look at the incredibly high price point of a lot of these campaigns that are coming out and that are using Kickstarter as a vehicle for these higher price points, because they could never get wide distribution in stores because of that premium price point. And so it's nice when you see that some campaigns are reasonable and do feel like a good deal of sorts, or not a horrible deal. And I know you're going to get a lot of stuff in Euthia. You're getting everything kind of added in, but for me, it's too much stuff. It's too much stuff. It feels overwhelming, and it also feels like the gameplay isn't going to be better than things that do a similar thing in that sandbox style that are $100 to sometimes $200 cheaper. This is one that's easy to get excited about, and if you get it, I hope you love it, but it's not for me. Just know that you do only have until Friday, August 5th at 1 p.m. to make your decision, because Steamforge, they do 10-day campaigns, And on that note, I brought up the 10-day campaign thing as an interesting point, and it felt a little bit of FOMO pushing, as this campaign sort of feels, because you do only have that deadline to get some of the other free things, right? And that's them trying to say, get your pledge in now, buy it now, lock in that money, and then pay the other shipping. You'll pay it later, who cares, right? But someone from Dia Games commented on that 5 reasons and mentioned that running a campaign takes a heck of a lot of time and effort. And to be fair to Steamforge, I think all of their campaigns have been around 10 days. So, I don't know. It still feels a little FOMO driving to me, but I understand that for every day that it's open, you need to have updates prepared and you need to have all this content prepared. And sometimes it's easier to not do that sort of thing. I get it. I definitely do. So I'll retract my 10-day point from the FOMO pushing, but I won't retract the fact that it is a short campaign and you do get these exclusive things that you will have to pay for if you get it in the Pledge Manager. So have that in your head, but I also have it in your head that, remember, there are other things you can get for a lot cheaper. I don't want this segment to be FOMO pushing on you. I want it to just let you know that these are the realities of the situation, and if it is something that you want, it is better to get it right now. So yeah, again, that's August 5th at 1 p.m. Moving along, we have a game called Dream Book, and this has raised a bunch of money, but it's also not a viable purchase. This isn't something that you should ever get, even though I'm talking about it, even if you're excited about it. I legitimately don't think you should get this. The only reason I really wanted to bring it up, one, is because it's a head-to-head 2-player card game, which...
So it's just like Duel Monsters.
Obviously. And 2, because it's kind of neat that there's this board element to it as well. It's a collectible card game or a trading card game where you're going to get a bunch of packs and you're going to create your deck and draw cards. But when you play cards, you're going to play them onto this grid. And the goal is to either eliminate all of your opponent's cards completely from the board or claim the entire row, their entire back row, and then you win. And I just really like and appreciate the concept of a card game or a trading card game where you have that sort of tactical grid as well. I think that adds a neat element to it and is a neat shift on that genre of each card having a special ability because it adds that map element to it. And I like that. I like that a lot. But it's $130 US with no shipping information, and that just makes it a repulsive campaign to me. And even the art, that is clearly just placeholder art for the Lewd Dungeon campaign, can't win me back over. No, not even you, Callahan. Especially not you, Rumpelstiltskin. Although, to be fair, it's because Rumpelstiltskin was once a boyfriend, an old boyfriend of Maggie's, and things just get a little uncomfortable when he's around, honestly. Plus, he's the reason that all of her clothes are made of gold, and now I have to keep up that level of opulence, or else she'll leave me, even if I am allergic to gold, and therefore he's also the reason why Netflix and chill usually just ends up in Netflix and rash. Of course I'm allergic to gold. Haven't you seen the core principles of this channel? Anyway, that finishes Saturday, August 6th at 3 p.m. And for our last game of the week, it is an exceptionally short week, but thank you for being here. We have a game called Mantle of the Keeper, which is a 2 to 4 player skirmish game that is basically just another version of Unmatched. If you're interested in Unmatched, I would check this one out. If you don't like Unmatched, well then turn your TV off, or your computer, or your phone, and throw it in a river. That's the company line from Restoration Games. That's their tagline for Unmatched. I'm sorry, I was just repeating it. I don't think you should do that. No, that's not my advice. You'll have your little character, you'll have a bunch of cards, and on your turn, you can do 2 things. You can draw a card, or you can play a card. And you get to do that twice. You can draw 2 cards, you can play 2 cards, or you can do 1 of each. And when you play a card, most of them will deal with attacks, and you'll need to be within a certain range to attack them and deal a certain number of damage, and they'll block it with their defense, and then the difference is how many hit points they take. Now, on the board, you'll see these little white outline boxes, and I was really excited. I thought that these were going to be just line-of-sight chunks, kind of, again, like Unmatched, but instead these are actually just obstacles that you have to contend with in the game, and that's cool because you have 4 different squares of board that you can choose. I think they're double-sided, and you can choose how to arrange the board, and you can also choose how to arrange the hazard tokens beforehand as well. And choosing the hazards beforehand, I really like this as an idea. It's what attracted me to Clash of Galliforms a few weeks back. being able to kind of pre-plan your game and then still have to contend with the randomness elements that pop up. I like that a lot. And you have the feeling of a bit of a home court advantage as well. So this one's $45 US, which is around $60 Canadian, and then $14 shipping to the US, $23 shipping to get to Canada. Because of the similarities to Unmatched, I would just, pick up Unmatched, honestly. But this gives you 2 to 4 players, and it looks okay. And that price point, depending on the shipping, isn't the worst thing in the world. So if you're interested in that, that also finishes Saturday, August 6th at 7:30 p.m. And that's it. That is it for the week. I know this takes us to next Tuesday, but there isn't really anything in Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So you know what? You can take yourself a little break off from checking those crowdfunding campaigns every day. You have a 3-day weekend. What are you going to do in that weekend? Extraordinary. But every week I do a pick for me and a pick for you. The pick for me being the thing that I'm the most interested in, and the pick for you being something that I think you should get, and then I can come over and play it, or I can borrow it from you and I don't have to spend my money on it. And there is a pick for me this week. There actually is a pick for me, and I think I've given away that there is probably no pick for you, but here we go. The pick for me is going to be Copperdale for $4 as a print and play. I really like the concept of roll and writes that use that standard deck of cards, especially if they're print and plays. There was that Western one. What was it called? Somebody comment what it was in the comments, and then you can look in the comments and find it. Or go back through the other crowdfunding countdowns and you'll see it. There was another Western one that looked really cool that used just basically a deck of cards. This one does as well. I just think for $4, if you're a solo player, or even if you just like roll and writes, or flip and writes rather, it seems like a cool little puzzle, and at that price point, I might try it. I actually might try it. I probably won't, because I don't think I have a deck of cards up here with me right now, and because I'm away from my house. But yeah, that one does look really intriguing and looks a little slick for the price point. So I'd check that one out. And then the pick for you is, it's nothing. There's nothing. There's nothing else. It can't be Euthia because it's just way too much money. It is. I mean, if you're excited for it, I'm thrilled. Again, I'm thrilled with the story, but it's not something that I could in good conscience recommend as a pick for you, because I think mechanically it seems like solid, but it doesn't excite me to any degree. So yeah, my pick for you is nothing. You're off the hook. My pick for you is go to the movie theater and enjoy a lovely evening out. Have a bag of popcorn, which costs you probably shipping for any Kickstarter pledge. I wish this was a better week, but we get what we get in Crowdfunding Countdown, and I appreciate you all being here, especially since we crossed that 7,000 subscriber mark just a few days ago. Thank you to everyone for being here and for commenting and for always being here and for letting me know when I decide to let YouTube run ads, and then they run ads every 3 minutes like a maniac, and so then I can never do that again. Everyone who comments, watches, even if you don't comment, if you watch, I'm just really thankful and appreciative of your support of the channel, of people who share the channel out and talk about me. I saw a couple things on Facebook in larger, the Board Game Revolution community group, which I've been slacking on posting the giveaway links that they usually do. I usually try to post those in the description of these ones, because they're always running good giveaways. And so is Quackalope's channel now, all the time, and really he's probably going to stop because they're not making him blow up as much as he wanted to. So go over to Quackalope and comment and give some engagement there if you want to keep having giveaway opportunities as well from that channel. That's another great spot to get potentially a lot of fun free stuff, and I like free. But back on track, thank you to everybody for supporting. You all friggin' rock. Hitting that 7K is great. I'm looking forward to when we hit 7.02. That's, that feel a bit better. 7.03 or 20,000 subscribers. Any of those numbers honestly would feel good. I just really appreciate you being here. I appreciate this community that we have built. I appreciate everyone's support, and I ain't stopping. Right now, on a personal note, I'm up in Southampton, Ontario at the Bruce County Playhouse doing a show, a theater show called Real Estate. If you happen to be in the area, you could come see the show, but more if you happen to be in the area, let me know, and we could play some games. That's more what this call out is really about. For those of you who are interested why I am in this sort of background and have been for the last little while, it is because of your support and people enjoying this channel that I have been working pretty much nonstop to try to make sure I get out the YouTube videos and the content out. And even though this particular video series takes me a long time, and you know, a lot of other ones do too, I'm committed to this and creating continued content for you all, and I'm just appreciative that you enjoy it. So because you keep showing up, I'm gonna keep making it. It doesn't matter how long it takes or how late into the night, it has to happen. So thank you for 7,000 subscribers. You're friggin' great. I'll have to plan out some sort of giveaway to do when we hit 10,000, because that just seems like a nice milestone. And yeah, I also like giving away things as well. I don't mind spending my money on shipping if it's going to you. Anyway, that's it. My name's Chris George, and I don't have a catchphrase. I do not. But, as some of my patrons like to make fun of me for, at least I have a nice wicker chair and a beautiful little lamp. Thanks for being here.